Hello everyone, welcome to This Year in Stupid 2017. So a huge amount actually happened this year, and that makes covering it all in this recap quite a difficult job. So there are a couple of subjects I'm going to leave out in general for future videos, in which I'll go into them in far more depth than I can reasonably do here. The first one will be Brexit, because a lot's happened and I want to go through it in a methodical manner. And the second one is going to be most of the Harvey Weinstein accusations. I'll only be touching on those on a sort of surface level, but I'll go into those a lot more deeply in future videos, because it's been a total shit show. Anyway, speaking of total shit shows, let's begin. Let's start in January 2017, where a Black Lives Matter anti-Trump protest in Seattle, where they decided that they just need to simply start killing people. In a video that has since been taken down, an activist associated with Black Lives Matter took to the megaphone to voice her support for, among other things, killing people and killing the White House. And while she said that, another protester can be heard saying, "Burn it." She also says, "White people, give all your fucking money, your fucking house, your fucking property. We need it fucking all." As another protester responds, "Reparations. Fuck white supremacy, fuck the US empire, fuck your imperialist ass lives. That shit gotta go." If there's anyone left with a shred of doubt as to the kind of people that are being attracted to Black Lives Matter, let me utterly disabuse you of those notions. These are the problems in Black Lives Matter that have to be fixed, and they simply won't be. On the plus side though, it looks like Black Lives Matter has well and truly run out of steam at this point, and I really don't see them getting anything else done. And Black Lives Matter deciding to simply ban white people from their meetings is probably not going to help them grow their movement. I think that 2017 really was the year that Black Lives Matter died. And in my opinion, that's a very good thing, because Black Lives Matter seems to have been a manifestation of the very worst elements of the far left and black identity politics. If you identify as a person of the African diaspora, you can attend our meetings and become a member. If not, you can support us in other ways, because now you're going to become a second-class citizen. But don't worry, it's okay. This is just what Malcolm X would have done. And Malcolm X wasn't a kind of racial ideologue who hated white people or anything. He was a really level-headed guy. On the 13th of April 2017, the Huffington Post published a blog called "Could It Be Time to Deny White Men the Franchise?" And initially, they stood by this blog and the argument contained therein, which I'm just going to summarise as absolute racist tripe. But as you can see from this, they did end up taking it down. And why's that? Were they persuaded that maybe, just maybe, denying people the vote based on their race is wrong? The answer is no. That's not the reason they did it at all. They've done this because the blog submission from an individual who called herself Shelley Garland, who claimed to be a master's student at UCT, cannot be traced and appears not to exist. Right, so they got fucking tricked into writing racially divisive stuff, posted it and stood by it, but only took it down when it turned out they couldn't actually identify the author. Even more interesting though, the Huffington Post South Africa, which is who published it, is a signatory to and supporter of the South Africa Press Code. We support free expression as limited by the following values set out in that code, and they include the discrimination and hate speech. Except where it is strictly relevant to the matter reported and in the public interest to do so, the media shall avoid discriminatory or denigratory references to people's race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, colour, sexual orientation, age, disability, rage, conscience, belief, culture, language, and birth or other status, except when it comes to white people, when we'll fucking stand by it. And so at the bottom they say, "We apologise for the oversight. We welcome future discussion." Oh yeah, you were just trying to start a conversation, weren't you? How about if we just deny white men the franchise in the democracies that they built? That sounds fair, doesn't it? There's nothing wrong with that or anything. I mean, it's not like anyone would be complaining if white men were like, "You know what we need to deny? The franchise, to black people." Let's talk about universities, and it's been a very interesting year at universities, and not all bad either. You get people like a Dr. Chanda Prescott Weinstein, who says she's going to dismiss science conducted primarily by white men, because, of course, they're white men. A physics researcher at the University of Washington says the controversial Google memo is just the latest example of shoddy science that is conducted primarily by white men. That's something I just have to take a little bit of exception to. The thing is, the memo was not actually science, it was referencing science, and I don't know who it was primarily conducted by, and it wasn't wrong, in my opinion, and the opinion of every single evolutionary psychologist I have spoken to on the subject, and we're talking, I think, about 6 of them at this point. From what I understand, it was about 90% correct, and when I say correct, I mean technically correct, the best kind of correct, and not politically correct, the kind of correct that this professor is looking for. She says, it's 2017, current year, and to some extent, scientific literature still supports a patriarchal view that ranks a man's intellect above a woman's. The facts don't matter, the ideology matters. Prescott Weinstein took issue with the contention related to her by a well-known scientist that the Google memo failed to constitute hostile behaviour because it cited peer-reviewed articles that suggest women have different brains, arguing that peer-reviewed is not synonymous with correct. No, it's not. But it is a way that we try and establish whether something has been checked by other scientists for scientific validity. The fact that it's correct is what makes it correct. I know that sounds rather tautological, but I don't know how else to explain it. If something is not incorrect, then we call it correct. Just because you don't like the fact that there are innate biological differences between men and women doesn't mean that there are no innate biological differences between men and women. And yes, it does seem that there are studies that show that men and women's brains tend to differ in the way that they function. Which is why she's angry that she thinks that Damore, who she refers to as a Google bro, relied on shoddy science to support a patriarchal view that ranks a man's intelligence above a woman's. That's not true. If she'd actually read his fucking memo, he doesn't say that. All he said was there are different interests that men and women, on average, tend to have. If Google wants to attract more women into its organization, it would be sensible for Google to tailor itself to attract these people. That is it. He wasn't making comments on how intelligent or not women are in comparison to men. He was just saying women have different motivations to men. They, in general, find different things entertaining. They want to do different things with their lives, and this is something that Google could take into account when trying to improve gender diversity at their company. Because ultimately, Damore's memo was an attempt to get more women into Google. But she was by far from the worst of the professors currently operating in academia. For example, this Trinity College professor who calls white people inhuman and suggests that we should just let them fucking die. Trinity College's Johnny Eric Williams' social media feed after the June 14th shooting of Louisiana Republican Steve Scalise, it is past time for racially oppressed people to do what people who believe themselves to be white will not do. Put an end to the vectors of their destructive mythology of whiteness and their white supremacy system. Hashtag let them fucking die. The Associate Professor of Sociology said on June 18th in a series of Facebook posts, "Now's the time to confront these inhuman assholes and end this now." Mr. Williams' Facebook page also featured an anonymous article on Medium accusing Mr. Scalise of being a racist and one of the most anti-LGBTQ politicians in Washington. If you see white people drowning, if you see them burning in a building, if they are bleeding out in an emergency room, if the ground is crumbling beneath them, if they are in a park and they turn their weapons on each other, do nothing. A June 16th article by Son of Baldwin says, "Let them fucking die, and smile a bit when you do." It's really difficult to think of a more hateful attitude towards white people from non-white people when you read this, isn't it? I mean, the far left must realise how this kind of radicalized racial hatred of black people towards whites is not going to win them any friends, and it's really just going to make them into the tiny irrelevant rump movement that they are, where they've kicked out all of their white allies and they're just screeching and shouting about how they should go around killing white people. And why? Because all white people are racist and all men are sexist. According to a Georgetown University law professor, Preston Mitchum even told Campus Reform that simply being a part of any dominant group when it comes to race, gender, sexuality, etc. contributes to the oppression of other groups. Well, then why would we ever change that? If non-white people became a majority over white people, then white people would be able to legitimately say, well, we have to fight the non-white people because they are inherently oppressing us. I mean, you can see the Marxism just dripping off of this, can't you? Any of the dominant group is definitely oppressing the inferior group because there is literally no other way to visualize this. You can't not be oppressing them. And ultimately, is that an argument for anything other than segregation? You can't have anything but segregation when you have this attitude, which is presumably why the far left are bringing back segregation. And I had quite a large section about this in last year's This Year in Stupid, and I'm not going to cover it nearly as much because, honestly, it's something I've covered enough. But I just want to point out that yes, they are still arguing for black and Muslim students to be segregated, and yes, they are still demanding no whites allowed safe spaces to plot social justice activism, at least according to the College Fix. A student activist group at the University of Michigan is demanding campus officials provide them with a permanent designated space on central campus for black students and students of colour to organise and do social justice work. The demand is one of several lodged by Students for Justice, who this month ratcheted up campus demonstrations to pressure administrators to cave, complaining in a newly launched petition that President Mark Schissel has snubbed their demands. The clamour for segregated space for students of colour to organise social justice efforts comes even as the public university builds a $10 million centre for black students and others in the centre of the campus. What is it that they won't demand? And the students themselves are quite happy to wear white puzzle pins to remind themselves of their white privilege. Don't worry, you don't actually have to wear a special star on your lapel. We know you're the whiteys because of the colour of your skin. You may remember Professor Brett Weinstein, who is something of a Jordan Peterson-style hero after he decided to stand up to these racialized activists when they demanded a white people-free day on their campus. He turned around and said no, despite the fact around 50 of them approached him and surrounded him and started yelling and screaming and chanting at him to intimidate him. This was widely reported in the mainstream media in places like the New York Times, where it was becoming increasingly more obvious that there is no defending this behaviour, the professors that are encouraging it, or the students that are participating in it. This is totally unacceptable, especially when it turns out that Weinstein has a history of fighting racism. He has personally stood up against racism, and now he is being drummed out of his class because he's fucking white! In 1987, he had stood up at the University of Pennsylvania against racism that he had been witness to. And yet this is not good enough. He is white and so he has to leave. So at the end of this scandal, when he ends up resigning and the college is forced to pay him $500,000, all I can say is fucking good. He deserves it. He earned it for standing up against a racist hate mob who wanted to penalise him because of the colour of his skin. Bravo, Professor. I wish more people would do the same, because all it takes to defeat these social justice bullies is to tell them no. Which is why you've never heard of W. Taylor Reveille III, the president of the College of William and Mary in Virginia, because he just told them to get fucked when they came to him with a list of demands, literally saying, I don't deal in demands. The confrontation started when the students brought their demands to a live stream meeting. Reveille minced no words. He said, I don't deal in demands. I don't make demands of other people. I don't expect to receive demands from other people. I love to get suggestions, recommendations, strong arguments, but when you approach other people with demand, instead of their ears opening and their spirit being unusually receptive, you get defensive walls erected. So I think you all need to think about it. In the end, the students just gave the fuck up because he just was not taking their shit. One student said, we are students, and we pay tuition to be here. That's the reason we're able to write these demands. Another said, so you have an issue with the way we're phrasing this. I think you're missing the point. We've tried to be nice. It's not working. So if you don't want to have issues on this campus that are affecting students of colour, then you have to listen to students of colour when they tell you this is what needs to happen. So just so you're clear, this is a power play. They want control of the situation, the campus around them, based on their race. And so Reveille later irritatedly pointed out, I got colour too, I'm white. The students impotently ranted and raved on Facebook and other social media platforms, but he did not care. but Reveille did not give a damn. One student said, "If you're wondering what speaking truth to power looks like, this is it. It's what being censored looks like. This is what white supremacy looks like. This is what patriarchy looks like. This is what condescension looks like. This is what being told you, your issues, and your life don't matter looks like. This is why we say Black Lives Matter." What, because this guy won't let you bully him into submission? If that's the sum total of Black Lives Matter, all I can say is, Mr. Reveille, bravo. Bra-fucking-vo. For example, when Charles Murray tried speaking at a liberal arts college, he was chased out by an angry mob of racist left-wing students. Murray says that when the bell curve came out, I'd have lectures with lots of people chanting and picketing with signs, but it was always within the confines of the event and I was eventually able to speak. I've never experienced anything like this, because the demonstrations began conventionally enough, with several hundred organised protesters packed into a lecture hall on Thursday, chanting and holding signs. They ended with Murray being forced to move his lecture and later being surrounded by an unruly mob of students and outside agitators as he tried to leave the campus, according to witnesses and school administrators. After swarming Murray, a faculty member and a school official, the protesters shouted profanities, shoved members of the group, and then blocked them from getting to a vehicle in a nearby parking lot. Witnesses said the confrontation was aggressive, intimidating, and unpredictable, and felt like it was edging frighteningly close to outright violence. And why wouldn't it? These students have been utterly radicalized by their professors and think that they literally need to tear the system down, and anyone who gets in their way is a violent oppressor that needs to be fought. Why fucking wouldn't it get frighteningly close to outright violence? And the thing is, one female professor was injured by this mob, and she says that she feared for her life. Listen to her account of this. Murray and Miss Stanger tried to leave the campus to attend dinner with faculty and students when swarmed by an angry mob of at least 20 protesters who wouldn't let them past. I didn't see it happen, but someone grabbed Alison's hair just as someone else shoved her from another direction, damaging muscles, tendons, and the fascia in her neck. He said that if it hadn't been for Mrs. Stanger, Middlebury spokesman Bill Berger and 2 security guards keeping the mob at bay, he would have been pushed to the ground. Miss Stanger wrote that most of the hatred was focused on Mr. Murray at first, until she grabbed his arm to make sure they stayed together. One thug grabbed me by the hair, and another shoved me in a different direction. I noticed signs with expletives and my name on them. For those of you who marched in Washington the day after the inauguration, imagine being in a crowd like that, only being surrounded by hatred rather than love. I feared for my life. Once they made it to the car, protesters surrounded the car, banging on all sides and the windows and rocking the car, climbing onto the hood. He said that they were eventually followed by protesters to their first dinner location and had to move to a restaurant outside of Middlesbury. Holy fucking shit. This has clearly gone too far. And the thing is, this is why it cost Ben Shapiro $600,000 for security for him to appear at the University of Berkeley this year. I mean, that's ridiculous. Ben Shapiro is a short Jewish conservative who says remarkably normal, middle-of-the-road, milquetoast conservative opinions, and this is something that costs $600,000 now. It's fucking absurd. But on the plus side, I have to point out, as soon as the authorities actually get involved, and I was personally at Berkeley this year, as soon as the police are actually allowed to get involved, as soon as they are actually allowed to prevent the radical left from starting violence, the radical left backs down. All that needs to happen is a firm hand has to be shown. That's it. And these people will back down. But honestly, there is no excuse for anything that is happening here. There is no justification for it, and it really has to stop. And honestly, if that means getting rid of these problem professors, then it means getting rid of these problem professors. Which is why I was rather pleased to hear that George Ciccariello-Maher, the white genocide professor from Drexel University, has finally quit. After December 31st, 2017, I will no longer work at Drexel University. Fucking good. You can't simply be a professor and then say, well, you know what, all I want for Christmas is white genocide. There's no problem with that. I mean, it's not like there aren't massive racial problems on these university campuses caused by far-left communist professors, of which George is one. Oh no, no problem at all. And I don't want to see like hate mobs from the internet doing this. I want to see the deans of the universities, the presidents of the universities, getting rid of these problem professors of their own volition. They are creating an environment that is unsustainable at your universities. You must cut them loose. If 2016 was the year that comics were fully taken over by social justice, and it was, as you can see by the pictures on the screen here, one is the black female Iron Man reboot, and the other one is a comic called Mockingbird. You can't quite see it there, but the t-shirt she's wearing says, "Ask me about my feminist agenda." And don't forget that Captain America, the famous Nazi-fighting comic book superhero, ended up turning into a Nazi. Just to give you an example of just how deeply the SJWs have infected, radicalized, and ruined comics. But if 2016 was the year that SJWs took over the comic book industry, 2017 is the year that these chickens have come home to roost. Marvel executive claims sales are down because of women and diversity. Holy fucking shit! Did this cause a shitstorm in the social justice community? He literally said, "What we heard was that people didn't want any more diversity. They didn't want female characters out there. That's what we heard, whether we believe it or not." I don't know that that's really true, but that's what we saw in sales. We saw the sales of any character that was diverse. Any character that was new, our female characters, anything that was not a core Marvel character, people were turning their nose up against. And that was difficult for us because we had a lot of fresh, new, exciting ideas that we were trying to get out and nothing new really worked. Because honestly, nobody wanted this kind of gender communist fucking propaganda being pumped into their faces. And there were some unbelievably cringeworthy examples, such as the female Thor literally arguing against the patriarchy and claiming that feminism was not a four-letter word. It could not have been more embarrassingly obvious what agenda they were trying to push, and the public just was not interested. Of course, the SJWs, who are for some reason counted as Marvel fans, but we'll get to that soon, are in an uproar. Of course, as soon as Gabriel's comments hit social media, he rapidly clarified because he was being fucking torn a new one. He said, "Let me be clear, our new heroes are not going anywhere. We are proud and excited to keep introducing unique characters that reflect new voices and new experiences into the Marvel Universe." And yes, that is a black Spider-Man just above, just in case you were curious. Just in case you were wondering just what the fuck was going on. And why do people reject the absolute perversion of the old characters that they enjoyed? And I know what you're thinking, why can't they just create new characters? And that's because social justice doesn't create anything, it just co-opts and destroys. It's a bleak week before Christmas for Marvel Comics, and writers and editors confirm on social media that many titles will indeed be ending in the months to come. And it sure looks like Marvel's cancelling both of its comics starring queer characters. Marvel cancellations: Captain Marvel, female-led; Generation X, arguably women of colour-led; America Chavez, queer women of colour-led; Hawkeye, female-led; Gwenpool, female-led; Iceman, gay male-led. Really interestingly, there are comics that sell really bad and still stay on shelves. It turns out that social justice kills everything. And unsurprisingly, the retailers themselves are taking Marvel to task over the SJW comic books at the New York Comic Con. They aren't happy that Marvel are ruining their businesses as well. Objections kept being brought up, and soon retailers would bring up the fact that Marvel now had female versions of characters instead of males, with echoing shouts from the crowd of retailers about not changing all the characters all at once, which is something I have also heard Marvel executives themselves echo. But things were getting tense. This is what happens when social justice conquers a new industry. After they rout the baser weaklings who don't even realise what makes their products good, and now they are reaping the consequences. Two older retailers started raising their voices and arguing about how diversity does not work. The words black, homo, and freaking females were used multiple times, at which point other retailers started to boo those retailers and the room started to tell itself, yeah, but where's the lie? No one's ever given a shit about black, gay, or women characters in any way, shape, or form. No one has a problem with any of them. What they have is a problem with the agenda that has introduced these characters. I don't recall people ever complaining about Wonder Woman, but then Wonder Woman wasn't based on a sort of gender version of communism. Wonder Woman was actually a startlingly liberal hero who was all about self-empowerment and the empowerment of the individual. And again with any of these other characters. But as soon as you start bringing in this, oh, we're oppressed, we're this, we're that, suddenly it doesn't work. Because put simply, you can't get behind an oppressed superhero. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And it has led SJW pop outlets to start pleading with their own readership. Comics, you've got your diversity, so why don't you buy them? And holy fucking shit, have I got a red pill for you. It turns out that the people arguing for diversity don't actually enjoy the media. And once you've converted it entirely to fit their sensibilities, you find out they are a tiny fucking fraction of the population who are just really loud and obnoxious on social media. They are not your fucking audience. So Diamond's top 200 titles show a plethora of non-white male leads. Here's a breakdown by the ranks, and it's really, really, really diverse. So, doing a lot better, right? But out of the top 200 books, that's 38 titles where the lead is not a white heterosexual male. It's not perfect, but it's much more diverse spread of characters than we've had 5 years ago. Except for one thing. It's the sales. A substantial quantity of diverse titles means nothing if they're plummeting towards cancellation, and many of these books are headed in that direction. Comic books are a remarkably competitive marketplace, and Marvel and DC are businesses first and social justice pioneers second. That's your problem. They shouldn't be social justice pioneers at all. If the market really wants diversity, it needs to start putting its money where its mouth is. Put down Civil War 2 and pick up Silk. Put down Harley Quinn and try Mockingbird. These books don't have to fail if readers actually support them and send the publishers a clear message that it's what they want to read. But the publishers are giving you a clear opportunity to prove that's what you want. Your diverse books are waiting, and more can come if that's what you really want. You, the readers, need to show the companies that the call for diversity is real and not just a vocal minority. Well, check fucking mate. It was not a real call for diversity. It was an angry, ideologically psychotic minority who wanted to absolutely craft everything in their own image, regardless of whether that is what people actually wanted. And then we come to Star Wars, and one of my favourite things about this is people saying, oh, this wasn't a feminist film. This is a picture of the producer in the middle in the black t-shirt, a t-shirt that says, "The Force is female." The producer of The Last Jedi, ladies and gentlemen. This is a picture of a woman with "Ask Me About My Feminist Film Agenda" shirt. Oh, who's that replying to it? Rian Johnson. I want one. Who's he again? What did he direct? Oh, that's right. He directed The Last Jedi. Oh, but there's no agenda. It's not like politicized, guys. It's totally not. So I can't say that I'm surprised when Star Wars The Last Jedi had a 42% drop-off in box office receipts after The Force Awakens. It had a good opening weekend, obviously, and these things often do, but people just did not go back for repeat viewings. Getting to the point where Forbes described it as the audience striking back, with 77% Friday to Friday plunge for The Last Jedi, which is the worst ever for a Star Wars movie, putting The Last Jedi dead last with the worst daily holds of all of the Star Wars movies. This is the least popular Star Wars movie that exists, and it is the most obviously feminist one, and that's at least according to The Guardian, who said this is the most triumphantly feminist Star Wars movie yet, and much good may it do you. And what I really love is the apologia for it. Star Wars The Last Jedi has been killed off by PC culture, according to The Independent. No, really, people actually think that. Well, yes, the people who actually think that are The Guardian and Forbes magazine. I mean, do you disagree, Independent? Are you saying that these progressive outlets are, in fact, just wrong? Are you saying that these are right-wing, MRA, alt-right blogs or something? Of course not. Unfortunately, you can't get around the fact that your ideology is categorically responsible for killing off major entertainment properties when they start pandering to it. We have numerous examples of this across almost every entertainment industry. At what point are you going to take responsibility for it? Even Mark Hamill, the person who played Luke fucking Skywalker, is shitting on your film. In his words, he's not my Luke Skywalker. The only good thing to come out of Star Wars now are the Plinkett reviews and the memes. Because holy fucking shit, was this film a joke. And of course, the left are like, oh no, it's not that everyone hates the film, it's not that it got 50% on Rotten Tomatoes when the critics gave it 93%, it's trolls. It's alt-right trolls tanking the movie. We're absolutely sure of it. Yeah, okay, Rotten Tomatoes are saying, no, it's not the trolls. No, it's not. We know because we're the ones collecting the reviews. We know that it's not the trolls, but the left needs to cling to this. In fact, this film was so fucking unpopular with die-hard fans of Star Wars that literally 75,000 of them have signed a petition for Disney to strike Episode 8 from the official canon. They don't like your movie. These are Star Wars. I'm not a Star Wars fan. I don't give a fuck about Star Wars. I like watching people shit on Star Wars. So for me, this has been a bountiful harvest, and I have been able to enjoy taking part in this myself. But holy fuck, for the people who actually enjoyed this property, because Star Wars is the only thing keeping Disney afloat these days. As someone who fucking hates Disney, I've got to say, I'm not disappointed. And as someone who fucking hates Hollywood, I can't say that I'm disappointed that they're suffering their worst attended summer movie season in 25 years. I don't know why that is, but hey, I can only speculate. It was announced this year that there would be a female version of Doctor Who for the first time in the franchise's history. Nothing to do with feminism, I'm sure, and this hasn't outraged half of the audience, many of which are female, and I'm sure this won't absolutely tank the franchise as a fucking property. Oh, guess what? There's a teaser trailer for Ocean's 8, a sequel to Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 13, and now it's all women. I'm sure that won't ruin it. I'm sure this won't be an ideologically driven heap of shit. And the thing is, when they actually make anything that is designed for the far-left radical SJW agenda, it just fails. Such as this program called When We Rise. It fails again in the ratings and it gets cancelled. The ABC miniseries chronicling the history of the LGBT rights movement fell almost 1 million viewers from its premiere, netting an audience of only 2 million on Wednesday, with a 0.6 demo rating according to Variety. The show, created by Milk screenwriter Dustin Lance Black, pulled in 2.95 million viewers on its Monday premiere. People watched it, they decided they didn't like it, and they didn't go back to it. When We Rise is not the only LGBT-oriented television show to be hurt by low ratings. Eyewitness, an acclaimed and groundbreaking crime thriller that centered on two gay youths who witness a murder, was axed by USA. The series, directed by whoever, will not be returning for a second season after failing to find an audience. It averaged 639,000 viewers per episode, which has led these kind of far-left outlets to say, when we fall in ratings, we fail our movement. For some reason, when it comes to video games, comics, the movie industry, the fucking TV industry, LGBT activists, and people who like that sort of thing just aren't turning up to enjoy the media. Either they are a tiny sliver of the population who are incapable of making up the numbers, or they personally just never gave a shit about any of these things in the first place. And you simply saying, look, we're pandering to you, isn't enough to get them watching it. Either way, social justice kills entertainment. And I just want to point out that there is literally nothing that social justice won't destroy. The DC Science March organisers were racked by infighting over diversity. Their March for Science is being ripped apart by organisers who want to make gender and racial diversity the centre of a march initially formed to push back against the Trump administration's allegedly anti-science stance. The Starbucks investors are warning that the liberal agenda is killing Starbucks' business. Starbucks steadfastly maintains that sales aren't affected when it mixes coffee with social justice, but its new refugee hiring plan, which came in reaction to Trump's ill-fated travel ban, did ignite a pretty swift conservative backlash, and now some investors, who say they've had enough of the company's constant liberal agenda, plan to lambast Howard Schultz & co. at today's annual shareholders meeting. People are getting sick of your shit. And you may remember in 2015 when Starbucks did their laughable Race Together campaign. Because whenever a corporation tries to push any kind of social message, it's always cringeworthy, embarrassing, and highly divisive to the people who actually go there. For example, when Pepsi decided they were going to get social justice for their fucking commercial, and the internet did nothing but mock them on all sides of the political aisle. A company pandering to social justice is the worst thing they can do. Hollywood isn't operating in a vacuum, but it is operating in a bubble, as Hollywood celebrities have spent 2017 demonstrating over and over and over. And this started in 2016 when it came to the American elections, and it started with videos like this.
On Tuesday, November 8th, this country will make one of the most important decisions in its history. You have a chance.
You have an obligation
to be a part of that decision.
You might think it's not important. You might think you're not important,
but that's not true. And the only way we can prove that to you is by having lots of famous people.
Lots of famous people.
Lots and lots of famous people.
Just a shit ton of famous people.
Repeating how important.
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 Important. Important.
Important. How important it is.
Register.
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 Vote.
There's so many famous people.
Some of us aren't as famous, but still pretty famous.
Like, you've seen us somewhere.
Sometimes a not famous person will be mixed in with the famous ones.
They drive the message home
because of their unpolished sincerity.
Their unpolished sincerity.
but you only get this many famous people together if the issue's
one that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
a racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
I imagine in no small part to the insufferable self-importance of a bunch of people who pretend to be other people for a living, this happened.
Look at me. Do it. I will personally write you a campaign check now on behalf of this country, which does not want you to be president, but which badly wants you to run.
I think that Donald Trump is a clown.
Donald Trump is a clown.
I mean, does anybody seriously think that Donald Trump is serious about running for president?
Donald Trump, you know, he's a clown.
The likely moderator apparently believes that Donald Trump is a clown.
Which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones, right now, Donald Trump.
President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump, at least I will go down as a president.
So basically, this is the beginning of the end for Trump.
The beginning of the end.
Beginning of the end?
This is probably starting of the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
Donald, you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency.
The strongest person usually isn't the loudest one in the room.
So right now we have Hillary's about a 75 or an 80% favorite. We have different versions of the forecast you can look at.
The poll has Hillary Clinton up by double digits nationally, 12 points, 50-38, a four-way race.
Clinton leading in Florida, Clinton leading in North Carolina, Clinton leading in Ohio, Clinton leading in Nevada. I could go on and on and on.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
And so, right now, Mr. Trump, to answer your call for political honesty, I just want to say, you're not going to be president, all right? It's been fun. It's been great. I love you. But come on, buddy.
We have a major projection right now. Donald Trump will take Ohio. And CNN projects Donald Trump will carry the state of Florida. Huge win for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, we project, will win in Kentucky, in Indiana, with its 11 electoral votes. West Virginia, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, North Dakota, with its 3 electoral votes, and South Dakota, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, the state of Montana, North Carolina, Georgia, Iowa, Utah, Wisconsin, Arizona, Kansas with its 6 electoral votes, Nebraska with its 5 electoral votes, and Wyoming with its 3 electoral votes.
Sorry to keep you waiting, complicated business.
I'd just like to give a personal thanks to Donald Trump for creating the celebrity meltdown that we were treated to throughout all of 2017 and still continues to this day. This has been fucking hilarious. And the tears when they were wishing Obama well on his farewell party. Oh my God. And it just kept getting better, such as this article in USA Today. Horrified celebrities are live tweeting Trump's inauguration day. Well, after spending the entire campaigning season saying he's not going to win, he's not going to win, he's not going to win, and making so many jokes at his expense, for him to then win was just mwah. And the thing is, Trump's victory just kept the cringe coming.
Dear members of Congress.
Dear members of Congress.
Dear members of Congress.
Dear members of Congress.
I'm mad.
Flabbergasted.
Furious.
Concerned for my children.
I'm worried for everyone.
The majority of Americans, regardless of who they voted for,
did not vote for racism,
for sexism, or for xenophobia.
And yet Donald Trump won.
And since he won,
hate crimes are rising.
Women have been attacked in his name.
People of color attacked in his name.
You represent us in Congress.
You are our last line of defense.
So here's what we ask of our elected officials.
No, here's what we demand.
To the extent that Trump pursues racist, sexist, anti-immigrant,
anti-worker, anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, anti-environmental policies,
we demand that you vigorously oppose him.
We demand that you block nominees who threaten the rights of women,
the LGBT community,
people of color, immigrants, and the poor.
And we want you to know that we are with you.
As long as you do that stuff, we won't remain silent.
We won't remain silent.
We won't remain silent.
We'll work harder to mobilize our votes
and our communities.
But we need you,
and we expect you to have our backs.
To protect our civil liberties and to use your congressional powers
to obstruct.
To obstruct.
Obstruct, defeat,
anything.
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 Anything that violates our core values as diverse Americans.
That's right. Because these lunatics have sat in their bubble for so goddamn long, they actually think they represent the majority of the country. And the longer the year went on, the more obvious it became that they fucking didn't.
My name is Ashley Judd.
Ashley Judd is here.
I am a feminist. And I want to say hello to Independence Avenue in the back, all the way down to 17th Street.
Wow.
And I bring you words from Nina Donovan, a 19-year-old in Middle Tennessee, and she has given me the privilege of telling you what she has to say. I am a nasty woman. I'm not as nasty as a man who looks like he bathes in Cheeto dust. A man whose words are a diss track to America. Electoral college sanctioned hate speech contaminating this national anthem. I'm not as nasty as Confederate flags being tattooed across my city. Maybe the South actually is gonna rise again. Maybe for some, it never really fell. Blacks are still in shackles and graves just for being black. Slavery has been reinterpreted as the prison system in front of people who see melanin as animal skin. I am not as nasty as a swastika painted on a pride flag. And I didn't know devils could be resurrected, but I feel Hitler in these streets. A mustache traded for a toupee. Nazis renamed the cabinet. Electroconversion therapy, the new gas chamber, shaming the gay out of America, turning rainbows into suicide notes. I am not as nasty as racism, fraud, conflict of interest, homophobia, sexual assault, transphobia, white supremacy, misogyny, ignorance, white privilege.
The unfathomable cringe that Donald Trump has unleashed may be his own undoing.
Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I am outraged. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
You wouldn't think they'd just lost an election, would you? You'd think they'd just been conquered by a foreign power. But no, all it was a vote. Celebrities in 2017 could not stop publicly embarrassing themselves every time they were given a fucking microphone.
This award from you, who take your craft seriously and earnestly believe, like me, that great acting can change the world, is a call to arms from our fellow craftsmen and women to go deeper, and through our art to battle against fear, self-centeredness, and exclusivity of our predominantly narcissistic culture, and through our craft to cultivate a more empathetic and understanding society by revealing intimate truths that serve as a forceful reminder to folks that when they feel broken and afraid and tired, they are not alone. We are united in that we are all human beings, and we are all together on this horrible, painful, joyous, exciting, and mysterious ride that is being alive. Now, as we act in the continuing narrative of Stranger Things, we 1983 Midwesterners will repel bullies. We will shelter freaks and outcasts, those who have no homes. We will get past the lies. We will hunt monsters. And when we are at a loss amidst the hypocrisy and the casual violence of certain individuals and institutions, we will, as per Chief Jim Hopper, punch some people in the face when they seek to destroy the meek and the disenfranchised and the marginalized. And we will do it all with soul, with heart, and with joy. We thank you for this responsibility. Thank you.
I think they've forgotten that they're fucking actors. It's almost like they've forgotten that they pretend to be other people for a living. Great acting can change the world. You're going to punch people and slay monsters? Don't make me fucking laugh.
The discourse is over. We have sat, we have talked, we have argued, we have pondered. The discourse is over. These people that tweet you when you retweet somebody, when you just say a simple fact that should not cause you to get a knot in your stomach, like, I'm not a Nazi. The people that tweet you and say, nor am I, but just out of curiosity. Just tell them to go fuck themselves. The discourse is over. The war has begun. You're not talking to Nazis anymore. You're not talking to people that want to entertain the notion of being a Nazi anymore. You don't want to talk to people that want to circumscribe the concept of Nazism within a fucking Socratic dialectic about goddamn whether Nazi. They're fucking Nazis. It's the bedrock of humanity. It is so low that the worst people in the world find it, and that's where they rally. And it's so low, we have gotten so bad that a third of our country has gotten there. 29% of the people are fucking Nazis. Let's face it, that's a minority. We can beat them. We have to say, I'm not a Nazi, though. 2/3 of the country just don't want to be political. It's not politics to say you're not a Nazi. It's like taking a shit. You just do it, or you explode!
The fucking cringe of listening to millionaires completely dismissing what the regular people on Twitter are saying to them, trying to get through to them, saying, look, we're not Nazis either, and for them to just sit there and go, no, you know what? A third of the country are Nazis, you're all Nazis, and now we want a civil war. It's fucking histrionic, but add to that, it is also hysterical watching all of these pampered cunts losing their fucking shit. But really, what's a celebrity to do in the age of Trump, now that they've politicized their whole careers around fighting what they consider to be Nazis, and they lost? What should they do? Should they be voicing their political opinions? These are real questions. Should celebrities be involved in politics? Should J.K. Rowling be tweeting about Nazis? I mean, there are definitely people who think that we should. There are definitely people who think that we should get the most out-of-touch, disconnected people in society who literally have nothing to their name other than virtue signaling and say, sure, your opinion matters. In fact, it's got so bad that if someone like, say, Taylor Swift says, look, I just don't want to be involved in politics, then she can be attacked for not voicing a clear opinion in the elections. She's not allowed to be apolitical because that means she's probably a fucking Nazi. So yes, obviously celebrities should talk politics. Oh, except these celebrities. Because these celebrities getting political are exactly the wrong kind of celebrities. You can't support Donald Trump as a celebrity. That makes you a Nazi. And don't do what Matt Damon did and start trying to explain social justice issues. Because I think that if there's one thing we can all agree on is that Hollywood has been utterly overrun by this ideology, and now this means you're about to get told to shut the fuck up, you fucking white male. And there's a huge problem with Hollywood anyway, because they have been whitewashing films for decades now. I mean, don't worry about them blackwashing films this year, such as The Dark Tower. Blackwashing is a good thing, whitewashing is a bad thing. Accurately representing the stories you're trying to portray is just something that a racist would do. And the thing is, speaking of racists, why are Hollywood saviors always white? That's a really good question that nobody ever seems to answer adequately, but I think Teen Vogue can help us out here. Hollywood's white savior obsession is an extension of colonialism. That's right, all of these rich, famous, far-left social justice warriors are actually fucking colonialists. I knew it. Because let's be fair, Christian Bale's right. We would be better off if white dudes weren't just ruining everything. We should probably listen to Eminem and his incredibly cringy diss track. Being white is embarrassing, I want to kill myself. Rapper says he's so embarrassed of his race that he wants to check out of life. Well, okay Eminem, but I have to ask, what's stopping you? Because really, you should be like Ed Skrein white people. Stop apologising for a lack of diversity and fucking do something about it. When Ed found out that he would be playing a character in a Hellboy reboot, he accepted the role unaware that the character in the original comics was of mixed Asian heritage, and so he deplatformed himself forthwith, because my god, it's okay to blackwash, but whitewashing, that's wrong, and good on Ed for at least living to his principles. Because Hollywood still sucks for people who aren't white, straight, and male. Despite the fact that this year's Oscars featured a record number of black actors, and major companies like HBO focusing on developing shows by people of colour, you might think that they're making real progress, but no. No, it turns out everything's shit, and it always will be, because let's be honest, it has to be, or social justice means nothing. I mean, you can't sit there and go, hey, there's a shift happening in Hollywood. Being ethnic is cool, because fuck. If being ethnic is cool, then it's really hard to say that white people are racist and black people are being oppressed by that. If being ethnic is actually cool and desirable, then oh dear, we're going to have problems. And I can't believe that out of all of the fucking outlets to do it, it was CNN early on in the year that called out Hollywood for their insufferable hypocrisy. Voters didn't take much notice of what Hollywood says about politics. If they did, Hillary Clinton would be president by now. What's more, when Meryl Streep launched a tearful, heartfelt attack on the president-elect at the Golden Globes on Sunday night, accusing him of mocking a reporter with a disability, it did not surprise. A Hollywood star unloading on a Republican? Seen it. Donald Trump responding with a vicious counterattack on Twitter? Predictable. Trump called Streep overrated, as if they're a pair of screen rivals having a good old-fashioned catfight. But people hate being lectured by Hollywood. Why? Partly because Los Angeles is a strange alien land full of beautiful eccentrics who use private jets like the rest of us use cabs. Partly because their politics are often far left and absurd. But also because Hollywood is grossly hypocritical. Movie makers may hush over liberal causes at award ceremonies, but the industry they work in does not reflect those values. On the contrary, Hollywood can be just as regressive and conservative as Donald J. Trump. And then the Harvey Weinstein scandal broke, which again is, I'm not going to cover it in any great depth in this video because it will go on for literally forever if I do. But just putting it simply, Harvey Weinstein, one of the largest, most important movie moguls in the entire city, turned out to be a massive fucking predator. And then the floodgates opened. And it turns out that over 100 other major male celebrities in Hollywood have been accused of basically the same thing. And with that, any moral authority that anyone in Hollywood might have thought they had was washed away overnight, because it turned out that these were open secrets that had been joked about in various programs that millions and millions of people had already seen, but nobody really knew the backstory to. It turns out that everyone fucking knew. And it turned out that almost everyone in Hollywood was fucking gross and knew that these things were happening. And so it was actually a real relief to hear some celebrities come out and say, you know what, People do not want to hear about my politics. I understand that because I am a fucking actor. I pretend to be someone else and I get paid an inordinate amount of money for it. And I think it was said best by Gene Simmons. I think celebrities should basically shut their pie holes and do what they do best. Act, sing, tap dance, juggle balls, all that kind of stuff. That's right, entertain us, you dancing monkeys. Here's a few shekels, now get to work. Because literally nobody is interested in your opinions on anything political because you're a bunch of fucking spoiled idiots. And so for the final segment, we will talk about Donald Trump. And I know that there are going to be people who complain about this, but I'm afraid I am only going to really cover Trump's actual achievements, the successes of his presidency. And I'm going to do this because, as we learned earlier in the year, 90% of the coverage of Donald Trump has been negative. And so it's just not worth my time to spend hours compiling all of the negative press Donald Trump has had, because there's just so fucking much of it. If you want to hear about the bad things Donald Trump has done from whichever perspective you like, you can go to almost any other media outlet. I'm just going to tell you about the good things he's done because you'll hardly find that anywhere. So the first thing that Donald Trump has done, which is absolutely spectacular, is pummel the living shit out of the media and strip them almost entirely of any moral authority that they had.
Nice to see you.
You wrote in your most recent column that the media keeps losing to Donald Trump. How so? Is it a trap that the journalists are falling into?
Yeah, I think it certainly is a trap, and I think we're in this unusual position of what we think is covering Donald Trump turns out to be, in a sense, actually what we think is debunking Donald Trump turns out to be supporting Donald Trump.
So when we fact check misstatements he says, that helps him.
I think it does. I mean, I think we're doing, he in every situation seems to be provoking an overreaction. So we go into a fit of apoplexy, and what we set up is, as we try to go after his credibility, our credibility becomes equally a problem.
I've heard other people make this argument that there's hysteria from the national news media right now. I don't see individual journalists acting hysterical. But maybe the abundance of coverage comes across that way?
Well, first thing, I think that's not true. I think individual journalists are, in many cases, having a nervous breakdown. A good example, The New Yorker. The New Yorker has 100 years, has had one style of journalism, very detailed, very close reporting. Mm-hmm. Since the election, David Remnick, the editor of The New Yorker, has gone off in fits of bloviation, never seen in The New Yorker before. No facts, no nothing. He knows nobody in this new administration has done no reporting, and yet the world is coming to an end, in his view. I think it's, and I mean this with truly no disrespect, but I think you can border on being sort of quite a ridiculous figure. It's not a good look to repeatedly and self-righteously defend your own self-interest.
Wolf is absolutely right. The media do look absolutely ridiculous, and media approval ratings have never been lower. Almost half of the United States think that the media just make up stories about Trump. They think they just fabricate them from whole cloth, and there's a good reason for that. They fucking do. As 2017 draws to a close, there is still no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. This is a conspiracy theory that they have pushed since day one, and they have nothing. 4 investigations into Russian meddling in the election has turned up nothing. It's all hot air, and it's been wall to wall for the past year. It's got to the point where Ezra Klein of Vox, the founder of Vox, is literally just stating, "It sure looks like there was collusion between Trump and Russia. They don't provide a smoking gun, but it's almost impossible to believe there wasn't collusion between Trump and Russia." Okay, but there's no fucking smoking gun, which means you are a conspiracy theorist. But don't get me wrong, a year-long smear campaign by almost all of the media has definitely damaged Donald Trump's approval ratings, and I would be wary to say, for anyone who's absolutely convinced that Trump will get another 4 years in 2020, don't bet on it. These people have done nothing but defame him. But as time goes on, the polling gets worse for the media as well. According to the data from the latest Harvard-Harris poll, which is provided exclusively to The Hill, 65% of voters believe there is a lot of fake news in the mainstream media. That number includes 80% of Republicans, 60% of independents, and 53% of Democrats, which goes to show you just how left-leaning the media is, but even then, half of their own base believe they're full of shit. So when the media is gloating about Trump's low approval ratings, they really need to start taking a look in the fucking mirror. According to a USA Today Suffolk University poll, Americans dislike the media more than they do the president. When asked how they viewed the media, only 36% of respondents said that they approve of the mainstream media, while a majority of 50% said they disapprove. That is fucking amazing. While they may be dragging Donald Trump down into a trench from which he may never escape, they have also done the same to themselves. It turns out, when you reach down onto the floor and start picking up shit to fling at someone else, you also end up covered in shit. And despite what the more hysterical segments of the media would have you believe, Donald Trump actually has achieved something. In fact, he's achieved so much that the Huffington Post has posted an article called, sadly, Trump is winning. So as I said, there are actually many lists of Trump's achievements, and it's worth your time reading them if you're actually someone who really wants to see what he's actually done, as in the things he has actually achieved. But there have been quite a few interesting ones indeed. For example, as reported by The Guardian, Trump has built an invisible wall and has slowed immigration without laying a brick. Trump can't get funding from Congress for his wall. It's just not within his power to do it. But just his attitude towards immigration and immigrants has encouraged immigrants not to come to the United States. So if that's not a win, I don't know what is. The next interesting thing is the US stock market, in what Reuters ominously puts as under Trump's shadow. But when you actually look at the graph and see what Reuters has to say about it, the Dow has closed at a record high more than 70 times since Election Day in 2016, and the S&P 500 has closed at a record on 52 days, the 5th most in any year. And according to Quartz, Trump is the 8th best jobs president in modern history. While under Obama the United States was hemorrhaging jobs, under Trump it has actually started to get jobs back, one of the core pillars of his campaigning rhetoric. He will keep jobs in the US, and he will try and keep them back. Well, there we go. He's actually doing what he said he would do. But I want to make it clear, it might not really entirely be his fault that these things have happened. For example, he said that he's added 1 million jobs, but it's likely that that would have happened anyway, or at least something along those lines. But at least he hasn't lost jobs, unlike under Obama. And it is true that unemployment in the United States is at its lowest for over a decade, but this is part of a declining trend. But it still continued, if not accelerated, under Donald Trump. And the thing is, it's got so bad that even Snopes can't just say that no, Donald Trump has been a failure. When an infographic like this has been going around, the worst they can say about it is it's a mixture of yes and no. And when everyone says, well, he's just doing it to get rich, well, that doesn't seem to be true, to be honest, given how Trump was the most notable loser on Forbes' list of wealthiest Americans, having lost $600 million over the past year. If this is some kind of selfish get-rich-quick scheme for Donald Trump, it's really not working, and you think he might just resign because of all the money he's losing. But to be honest with you, I think, as I've always thought about Donald Trump is a buffoon. He is not a man who's going to ace IQ tests, but he is also a patriot, and he does have a kind of animalistic cunning and understanding of how to manipulate other people, as he has shown with his dealings with the media. He is actually doing a good thing for the United States because he is a fucking nationalist. And he's not a white nationalist, as some people say. He is just an American nationalist. And thank fucking God for that, because I tell you what, 2017 could have been a much worse year if it wasn't for Donald Trump actually just standing up to the far left bullies and turning them into a bunch of hysterical fruitcakes. I have absolutely no fucking regrets so far. Over the course of the year, I have found myself going from a, well, he's not Hillary Clinton supporter of Donald Trump, to a full-on, fuck it, he's my guy. He's doing what he said he'd do, and he's turning the left fucking crazy. I have absolutely loved 2017. I think it's been great. I think it has been good for people who care about the national interest of their countries. I think that we have done a good job beating back the phenomenal forces of the progressive left. And I think in 2018, we can keep going, and we should. Just to let people know, I will be doing other live events as well, because I know a lot of people wanted to be able to come to the live event and it was just not a big enough venue, and I'll try and do a few in the United States too. I mean, I'm going to be out there anyway because of a certain someone, so I'll see if I can arrange a couple in New York or something like that, and I'll let everyone know when they're out. And I just want to say 2017 was a great year for me personally, and that's all because of you guys. I just want to really thank everyone for supporting me, for watching my videos, for upvoting them, for commenting, for supporting me on Patreon, for buying any merchandise of mine. Thank you all. Without all of you, I would have nothing, and I am well aware of that. And that's why I do not take outside money. I just take money that I earn from my YouTube channel, and from my Patreon, and from any merchandise sales. You guys fund me, and I will always keep that in mind. Thank you. And here's to 2018. Let's hope it's a good one.